Yeah.
Sorry. We're here to talk about the new album from the band Death Angel entitled The Dream Calls for Blood. This comes out October 15th, Nuclear Blast Records. Right now they're streaming this album today through Monday on their website. So you can check it out there, and that's where we heard it. And so here we are, wanting to talk about it. Now, I reviewed the title track to this album when it came out, and, you know, it's still one of the best songs on here, and, you know, Death Angel shared my review and stuff. So I have to thank them for that. So, yeah, thank you, Death Angel. What do you think of this album, Keith?
I like this album. It's definitely thrashier than Relentless Retribution. Because, like, those thrashy moments on that album, but this album is a lot more balls out thrash. Especially, like, first song, Left for Dead, begins, and it just kind of grabs you by the nuts, twists them, and yanks them, you know. First thing it does. And so that was... And everything's just kind of solid. I mean, the riffage is exactly what you'd expect from a thrash album. Everything's on par. A couple other good songs I remember was Son of Morning. Son of the Morning was another really good song. It's the second song in. Dream Calls for Blood, your title track, good. Yeah, it has those, you know, there's a lot of gang vocals on this album, and like, lots of them, which is very thrash, and especially on this song. A couple other tracks, you know, Succubus was interesting. It wasn't really thrash, but then like the chorus was really weird sounding. I don't know how else to put it. And then the last two songs, Empty and then Territorial Instinct and Bloodlust, were again very thrashy. I thought the ending of the last track was very cool. Just kind of, you know, again, a nice thrashy way to end the album. And all in all, it's a good album. It's not that it's bad. It's kind of samey, though, or not samey. It's like, it's a little hard to differentiate some songs from another song in a way, just because it's, even though it is thrash, it's kind of thrash the entire time, which, you know, only some bands can kind of pull it off. And Death Angel showed that they can kind of be more, you know, have a wider range with, you know, their writing, and I just feel like they just kind of replaced a lot of that, maybe a little bit with thrash. But it doesn't make it a bad album. It's just, you know, I don't know. I'd like a little bit of a different pace every once in a while. And the only other thing is certain parts of the vocals were just kind of weird. I don't know. Something went bad. They didn't stick out as much as Relentless Retribution in my mind. It's just sort of disappointing. Like, it's not bad, but I expected a lot more initially. But I mean, still a great album, I'd say. I enjoyed listening to it the whole way through. It was awesome. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Keith with pretty much everything he said. This is a good album. It's not great, but it's not bad at all. I mean, if you're a thrash fan, you know, like we are, I mean, you dig the fuck out of this. I mean, this is thrashy as hell. This album is pissed off, and it comes at you with a vengeance for the entire, 10 tracks that this album has. Only every once in a while it'll slow down, and it'll have some very cool acoustic part or something. Excuse me. This album just is very pissed off, and I think the addition of this album being so thrashy, it works for it, but then it, like Keith was saying, at times it doesn't, work for it. Relentless Retribution, I think, is an amazing record. We still listen to that all the time. But the thing is that it did lack a little bit of the balls out thrash. Like I said when I reviewed the title track to this album. But this album has that balls out thrash. It is everywhere. And this is like old school Death Angel kind of over here. I mean, this is some cool shit. The drumming is just fucking phenomenal on this album. It is very awesome to listen to. That's one thing that I probably would say is a high point about this album is just the drumming is phenomenal. The guitar work is very, very cool. Very thrashy, like we've been saying. But I think it's the song "Son of Morning" starts off very slow with this very just disgustingly evil riff. I thought it was so cool the way that song busted in. That's one of the highlights of this album for sure. Is that song? The title track stands as one of the best songs on here too. It just that song gets better and better with each listen. I really love that chorus, and what's the other one? The song "Empty" might be my favorite track on here. That chorus is really, really cool. It's very catchy, and I really dug the fuck out of that track. Like Keith was saying, there's a lot of gang vocals on here, and gang vocals were present on Relentless Retribution, but there's a lot more here. This album is it's kind of that old school thrash, you know what I mean? Lots of gang vocals, lots of just riffs. This is a riff sandwich, this album. Or like Sam says sometimes, this album is riff-freshing. But no, seriously, the riffing is phenomenal on here. They did a really good job with some of the riffs. I mean, they're really catchy. Death Angel has some very... I like their style of riffage, if you should say. I mean, they use some very strange notes that you would not think would go together at all. When you would initially hear it, you'd be like, what the fuck? But they make it work, and that's one thing I like about this. Now, one thing I think this album is a complete step up from Relentless Retribution is the soloing. Soloing is awesome on here. The two guitar players in this band, I always forget their names, and I apologize for that. But they shred, and this album is no different. Production-wise, this is just as good as Relentless Retribution, if not better. And I keep relating to Relentless Retribution because that is the album that I listen to the most by this band. I own Killing Season. I've listened to The Art of Dying a bunch. I've listened to their older albums a bunch. But just that album really stuck out to me. That's the album that got me in to Death Angel. It's my favorite album. That's why I'm kind of comparing it to that. And Killing Season, I just feel is slightly on the mediocre side. But this album is definitely a step up from that. But overall, I mean, this is a solid album. The only thing I really have a problem with is that it's so much thrash that it's almost too much thrash. I never thought I would say that. But it's just a couple of the songs I was just kind of like, I'm not really feeling this one. Even though it's thrashy, even though it's got this really good hook or something, I just wasn't feeling it. Such as Detonate or Caster of Shame. I just wasn't really digging it. It's mostly the second half of this album that just a couple of songs I was just kind of like, eh. But about the first 5 I thought were really, really excellent. The last 2 were really, really good. The acoustical parts on here are phenomenal as well. I loved the one that was on Relentless Retribution at the end of Claws In So Deep. So cool. An album starts off with the track Left for Dead that Keith was talking about with a very eerie intro. The intro for that song and to this album is very cool. But overall, I mean, the vocals are good, like I was saying, but they don't stand out to me as much as the vocals on Relentless Retribution. I think that's more because of how just thrashy and almost, I don't want to say it, I don't want this to sound like a bad thing, but one-dimensional this album is. I think that's why, because Relentless Retribution was more of a slower album, more of a mid-paced album, so the vocals really, really stuck out. They had these amazing choruses and verses, such as the song Truce, the title track, Absent of Light, River of Rapture, stuff like that. And the vocals are really good on this album, and at times just as catchy and just as good. But I think the faster you get, the more limited you are with what you can do, especially vocally. And I just think that's the reason why the vocals didn't stand out to me as much as they did with the last album. But I mean, overall, they are good. Rob, I believe his name is, or Mark. I forget. I
Something like
apologize. One of the two. Did a good job. I like his vocals too. I mean, he's a very good vocalist. So, I mean, that's about all I have to say.
Yeah. You talk about the acoustic parts. So the one in Execution Don't Save Me. I thought that was
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then like it just kind of completely, again with the theme of this album, just kind of gets rid of it and just goes 110 miles an hour. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just like it's like it's rapidly clipping your toenails. God, I'm so stupid. Whatever. What would you give this album?
Me, I give this album a solid 8 out of 10.
I would give it an 8 out of 10 as well. Check out Death Angels, The Dream Calls for Blood, because we said so, and because we gave it an 8 out of 10. That's a good fucking score, and it's a good album, and the album art is sick.
Yeah.
Bye.